Hi there everybody, my name is Kate and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. So one of the ways that the great teacher, the one that we talk about the most on the planet, Jesus, conveyed his messages, caveat, I don't exclusively stick with Jesus' story, so if you're going to need me to be a Christian and really follow that as the whole entire complete story that is predominantly what's on the earth, I'm not referencing Jesus in that context. I don't have a problem that people do, however, I'm not referencing him in that context. I'm referencing the material he conveyed and how he conveyed it was a very, very, very easy, gentle way for people to get the idea, the notion, the metaphor, and the parable all put together. This is the metaphysics of what you got going on here energetically, is that, yeah, when the prodigal son does this is what it looks like, and he was giving the preset for conversations to look very different today in quantum science, etc. So he was laying out the foundation back then. However, when we don't pull forward our information, or we don't have a good conveyance of that information anymore, we don't have a good metaphysician that can bring an allegory, a parable, a metaphor that everybody in the broad context can understand. Jesus knew who he was dealing with, and he put it in parable form. That, let me put this in picture book form, for those that are just beginning their journey and just coming to understand. Let me put this in big chunky block figures and chunky letters, etc., and in a chunky story that's kind of big and bulky in terms of like broad ideas, broad context. Here you go, and it's just a picture book. It's not as offensive. It's not as in detail. It's not quite as involved as a full chaptered book. By the time you're a little bit able to digest heavier food. When you're a baby, you eat not so solid food, and then you start forming that up into some solid stuff when you get some teeth. There's spiritual teeth as well, and we have to grow that wisdom teeth and knowledge. Funny how that works, huh? Our wisdom teeth. We have to grow long in the tooth to be able to really take a bite out of what that parable would fully mean. And we can come back to parables and metaphors and metaphysical understandings that we've been taught from Jesus, Buddha, anyone, when we can. And when we go back, we can take another nibble of that and say, let me see what this side of this look like. Let me look at the kaleidoscope, version of that and see where I think I'll lick this side of the ice cream, because that ice cream cone in its kaleidoscope totality, there's an endless number, in that little kaleidoscope. There's an endless number of different tasting licks you can have, as you're looking through the prismed experience of life, which all sounds like foo-foo and all that other stuff. However, how easy is it, or how difficult is it to shift your perspective? How much does shifting your perspective, taking your eye off the current ball and asking to go look at another one, does that in fact change your mood? Does it change the way you feel about things? Does it? And oftentimes it does. It's a matter of, we need let's take the gas off that, and put the, put the rest here for a moment while I tell you this quick little story about, take your gas, put your tank over here in my hands for a minute, take your foot off the gas, and let me be your governor for a moment to govern how you might want to step on that thing again. Here's some more information about what type of fuel you have, what kind of avatar you have, and what kind of road you're trying to navigate. You want to be a Mars rover, you need to be outfitted for that, and here's how. And if you don't want to be a Mars rover, then you're pimping and prostituting a temple where he might throw a table or two around, or you're selling his clothes after the resurrection. You're gambling for the clothes. I mean, these are pretty separate wheat chaff experiences where we're either looking for ways, we're looking for the parable, we're seeking, we're opening the newspaper. Does anybody know what the hell is going on here? And yes, the answer is yes, that Jesus preset us, Buddha, Plato, Aristotle, you go with whomever, whatever philosopher, really just, hey, I got what they were saying, I know what they meant. We've been telling this story for a very long time. It's just that it is moving through energetic fields that we're not familiar with on this planet. We haven't been familiar because, hey, they're brand new. What do you mean the frequency's rising? The Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of Earth, it's changing the way that we are connecting with her, because she upgraded. We don't have a choice. If you want to plug into nature, which is the most supportive way that you can do this life, is to plug in grounding from the bottom and reaching for the top and marrying those two experiences together, because that's what this process is and what it's doing. And from my perspective, I'm going to call it that. 444 and challenge anybody else. Please call it what soothes your soul, what you're willing to believe of your experience of designing your own blueprint and your matrix. And until you get in there and start, having those conversations that are above, surface level stuff, that have some intellectual highbrow conversations with yourself of what is really important to me to know here. Am I just here on a grab and growl and a snack while I'm here in this lifetime? Am I coming back here? Do I have some more time to revisit this place so that I can, get a taste of this part of the ice cream cone? Or am I stuck on this, kaleidoscope, thinking that it's a one dimension, or a one time experience of I've got chocolate on this ice cream cone? Baby, that's a kaleidoscope. And if you're only holding one flavor ice cream cone, don't even bother finishing it if you really want something better, because you can get full and sick on one ugly little chocolate ice cream cone when there's a kaleidoscope of ice cream choices over here. You might want to test that and say, I don't really do the pistachio. No, I'm going to come over here. Oh, I really like that. And that's how we can start narrowing down and shaving that ice cream cone so that it tastes exactly the way that we've experienced. And our heart, our mind, our nervous system, and everything about us from top to bottom all the way through is going, yep, I like that flavor. I'm not just eating something routinely every day because I've been programmed to do so. That's what the story told me. That's how I'm landing. That's the parable. There isn't one, because in that there is no parable. We're not even trying to understand our situation, because either we don't know we're in pain, we aren't in pain, we aren't acknowledging that we have a problem with anything in our situation, which, cool. People that tell me, why do you bother with all this shit you do, Kate? I'm like, because I was deeply bothered and in pain with my life. I was deeply uncomfortable, unable to cope with how miserable I felt and how powerless I felt everywhere. That's why I had to switch out that cone, man. I really am not going to be able to do chocolate. You can't tell me that chocolate is the only flavor, no matter how much I thought I loved it. It's really getting to where that taste of fake chocolate in my mouth is just, and the dairy is making me bloat and stuff and fart. So, I don't want that anymore. And I may find that by having that experience of even just deciding rather, that I'm really tasting this, my environment, what I'm licking here, really just tastes like shit. And conveniently brown and sugary, however, it's still 707 crap. It's just, this isn't the kind of flavor of life that I want to be consuming all the time. Occasionally we might get a bad cone or a bad lick. If you were to put it in that context, sure, we may get a bad lick somewhere. We may get a bad experience, and we'll continue to get that until we decide very consciously and then start moving the energy to make that change in the 3D. There's time that's necessary because we live in a continuum. There's no such thing as time, except on Earth, where we pay attention very close to that shit. So we're going to have to acknowledge it and somehow work in a way that we either understand time dilation and how to work with it and around it and through it, so that we can patiently receive our outcome here without wigging out on a time thing, or we find a way that sideways that adjusts to the time and lives by that standard and starts talking about how this isn't possible. We're shutting ourselves down if we simply change. And that's a biggie, right? That's a huge one. If we are simply able to change how we're willing to even consider things, that, ew, I don't like this experience. It might take me a minute, but I can instantly change my perspective, which, move around. Unclunk the energy, unclunk and unjunk right there. Put something in it that shakes it up a little bit. Let's, get the eyes moving. Use all the supportive tools that help switch up, walk around, move around, get some distance between you and your current location, period, like right there, the actual one you're standing in. Move around, just change. Because when we get fixed in places, we start narrowing down our body, our physical body, and embodiment of who and what we are. We narrow it down to the smallest, and we get like this. And then when we start reaching out and where our weakest that has come from into a place of power from the weakest, most demoralized and dehumanized spot. Even our raging predators who look like they've been doing this, they have. However, it's still, you have to rage monster and be a whole dictator, fascist, and a monster for everybody, and you just have to control whoever it is. It doesn't matter, top, dog, bottom. If that's the way we're rolling, we're in a game that we're not equipped for anymore at some point. The old and the slow are the first to go. The first, orca The moment orca is no longer relevant and younger orca's there, that older one, I've been the top dog all the whole time. Well, you're not anymore, because the cycle of life is that the old and the slow are the first to go, man. Sorry, you're gonna swim and, eventually sink one day, but there will be another one to rise up in a healthy hierarchy of predator, okay? In the apex predator system, that works because the field understands itself that the old orc is going. The young one isn't punking out the Mufasa style, being a grungy sister or brother or kin to the orca at the top. They wait in there patiently, doing their work and understanding that, yeah, we're, over here in the seals and we're doing our thing. However, when it turns into something so nasty, personal, and weird that we've destabilized our system, our apex predators, now we've got apex predators within the apex triangle of apex predators. Whoops, that turns into the cage fighting you see now. And so getting out of that game entirely requires the observation of that, even when it's painful, even when it's disgusting, even when we don't wanna, and toiling around in all the details of, oh my God, I can't believe he did this. Sharks are vicious, orcas are awful. If you're experiencing them as the predator they eat you. Possibly try to convince you to close up your throat chakra instead of saying what's true. Predators eat things below them. That's what a predator is. And when you refuse to play as a predator or as the chum to the predator, the system doesn't have, when a scuba diver isn't in the water trying to train an orca not to be a predator, or it's trying to swim with it like it, we're buddies, know who, 1111, know who you're dealing with, and are you an apex predator in my world? And if you are, am I an apex predator whisperer? Because if I am, maybe I have work to do here. And if I'm not, I might be a victim in a minute. I like to know where I'm standing in those, because sometimes I am there just to say, excuse me, orca, you're a flip phone in a iPhone technology era. You're in a smartphone era trying to run coconuts. It's not working. You're old and you're slow, and it's time to go. However, I don't dictate when that happens. That would be left to the apex predator to just, you've been served, orca, that you're not relevant in this system anymore. You're old and slow. Go coconut away, take your flip phone, flip it down, and, have the whole thing. When our consciousness is not pulling in that fast, then we learn those coconut lessons of, this is really not going to convey. I can't hear you over there, Bob. You're using technology that just doesn't break through the, all the clutter, the noise, and the bullshit on the planet. Maybe on an island, Sentinel Island somewhere 200 years ago, 500 years ago, or 3 lifetimes ago, we could coconut and have that discussion, and that was working. However, we're in a evolutionary process, Bob, and needs to look like something else, and not Morse code. It's next step up. We need to look at, multiple steps up. And they're just folks that, we're not going to run this, Morse code or this coconut talk or this flip phone. It's not, you haven't been doing enough updates, and it's a bitch, because it hurts. It's painful, and then it makes it even less enticing to want to even approach it. However, there are ways to deal with an apex system. However, until you really are willing to know that that's what this is, whether I like it or not, whether I agree with it or not, who I think is the ultimate shark, I don't care, because it doesn't matter what plane of existence you're in. As above, so below means that the apex system is leaving. So whatever has been predatory in my mind, my life, my reality, that's up to me to either get really good at playing predator games and hope for the best on every time as I get old and slow, thinking that I'm going to win that game. You get old and slow exponentially. However, if I go in and observe that from the observation point of, that's a shark tank down there, I'm just be dropping the stuff into the water of, hey there, do you understand that this is what's happening here? And when the shark or the orca is willing to jump up out of the water and bite my face off, I'm probably not talking to that tank very much, or for very long, or ever again. I'm taking that out of the inventory of places that I need to inform. You've been served, tank full of predators who are not understanding that you're going to continue to be left only with you, because nobody else is jumping into your tank with you to be your chum or your next meal. People are waking up, and the guppies that were waiting to be consumed by everybody around them, they've gotten to where they've learned how to jump out and get into the ocean where they belong, and the idea of sitting around waiting. People are really coming to understand, man, this hurts. I don't want to do this. And they're finding others who are willing to stand up in the face of that and do things, not just in rebellion. You know, rebellion is, screw rebellion. I need revolutionaries who understand the long game. You know, to revolutionize something means you change it. You know, the industrial era has brought us into all kinds of new understandings of how to ease up our life, and yet our consciousness didn't come with it. So it's time to do that upgrade. Give as much attention to our spiritual understanding, our spiritual mechanics, you know, and our scientific understanding through the spiritual field and the energetic fields, overlaying all of that. If we use all the technology we have today, we've got the industrial revolution, if you will. We're revolutionizing on an energetic scale. And that is in fact going to change the nature of anything that was built on just the 3D sand of earth understanding, limited and, you know, through many paradigms that keep it locked in the 3D existence. We're well beyond that now. Many people understand themselves as being non-corporeal and out in outer space somewhere in multi-dimensions, and we're having these weird conversations where we're having them. And people that aren't curious and people that are, yeah, that they're making their choices. So here's the choice point. You know, am I going to stand over a predator's cage and ask it to engage with me without really knowing what I'm doing, or trying to save it, or trying to put it down, trying to do anything except inform it of, you don't have to be in there. Do you know that? Oh, I see, you're gonna eat me if I get too close. Okay, then, well, you've been served. You know, the galactic bounty hunter left you with the, you've been served. You've now been given the chance. Here's your knowledge of, you'll never be able again to see this in this way, because at least one person has shed some light on, yeah, that no, that's not what this is. You do in fact have the opportunity to choose differently. However, you do have to choose differently, and that's on you. So we can't really do that though without putting a whole lot more context on what we're doing to begin with. Where are we starting to put some, you know, enlightenment on where we think we're going and how we're going to interact, because not knowing you're in a Shark Tank, that's crucial at this point. It's a hard way to find out when we do, if we don't already know. If we go in there consciously swimming around, you know, oh, okay, I've got a shark-proof suit here, I'm good. Then that's a much easier and less painful and less brutal and less bruising, you know, and personal experience when we have to do it. So anyway, I hope that that's helpful to you in some way, and I do hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin, because you're divine. It's absolutely fine, and it can help you find and stay in line with your team of non-apex predators if that's your jam. My jam is community of, you know, equality of everybody using their gifts in balance, you know, fluctuating, that there's no one. You know, it's a loose triangle structure. However, everybody moves into that position of authority as their skill base would dictate that I got this. This is where I kind of take over this wave of, you know, energy and what we're riding. We use the skill set that is for the common good of the collective. Apex predators really aren't doing that. That's not their angle exactly. And when you have one that's really, you know, I'm not even considering a pod of, you know, whales behind me. When you have one orca that's only serving, you know, if he doesn't tell the rest of the crowd where the seal is, where the groups of seals are, and he just goes and feasts on his own and lets the rest of his pod just kind of go and do their thing and die because they don't know where they're going and they were relying. Oh dear, you see how there's so many problems with that system that it won't sustain itself. Eventually, when the apex predator as a human cuts away and starts making new alliances, you know, like Scar did, then yeah, you're cross-contaminating a lot of fields of, you know, logic, etc., that it's still an apex predator. Whatever way you're going, whether, you know, Mufasa or Scar, you know, all of the names, what they look like, how they, none of it matters, because bottom line is that the primo apex predator and the apex king of Pride Rock was destabilized by somebody with a jankier idea that got him on the sly when he wasn't looking, because he thought like a predator. Mufasa thought like a leader. He needs to make sure that all of my kingdom, all of everything I can see, son, Pride Rock, it's all ours, and I'm responsible for making sure that, you know, we maintain this in the eco balance with, you know, your mom, you know, with this whole system. And what do you know? An orca came flying up in the middle of it and said, I'm anti-orca and I'm anti-pod and I'm here to destroy this whole thing. And it did destroy his whole thing. However, it was built on sand, dude. We're not doing that one anymore. It was rough. It was horrible. However, the rising king was crowned regardless, and that apex system went away. So that is what we see happening now. That's what I see happening now, whether other people agree with me or not. I see Apex Old being overtaken by, collaborative, very differently used Apex positions and New Earth leadership with new humans doing it with the new design of the divine matrix. That's what I see. So changing the perspective of what do you see. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for you in some way, and I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin, because you're divine, absolutely fine, stellar, and can take care of you and does take care of you all the time. Please get in touch with that and let it inform you of how not to be an apex predator and more of the apex predator wrangler, if that's what you do. Have fun no matter what you do, though, and take care, and I'll see you again next time. Mwah. Goodbye, my friends.